Hi, everyone. July 5th, 2023. I sure hope those people behind me that were setting off bombs for hours until 1:30 in the morning last night, I sure hope they're gone. Maybe went back to work. I am really needing a night of quiet. July 4th, never experienced a July 4th. And it was pretty bad in South Carolina with people that would just shoot them off, days and days and days before July 4th and then days after July 4th. But the continuous, from like when it gets dark, and it would be, they would shoot them off during the day. But oh my God, after like 9 or 9:30, continuous. It sounded like bombs. Till 1:30 in the morning last night. Every other night it was to midnight. It just really goes to show how Americans never think about anybody else. They just want their own pleasure. And I'm really sick of it. They do an awful lot of harm. Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing better than I am. So Sherry and Marty, thank you very, very much for showing up. And hello, Eli D, Judith, Linfor, Daryl Calhoun, At a Time, Hypocrites Matrix, Rainey Cascadia, M. Mercer, Justin Wynn, hey. All right. Yeah, it's... Man, I don't know what the hell is wrong with this country, but holy shit, something really is. As they say in the South, we ain't right. We ain't right. Here's satellite. Look at this. Got the frequencies going. Storm over the Panhandle. Oh, how many people are going to be flooded with these storms? Look at this thing in the Gulf, okay? Yeah, that ring of what is apparently, a weather front, precipitation. This ring in the front of little squares, the nanobots controlling what is taking place in the Gulf. But this thing is going from the Gulf, pretty much, South Louisiana, real South Louisiana, all the way on up. Look at this beauty. Really? Okay. The 1,000+ mile storms that we have seen over the recent years, manufactured, not natural, all of the frequencies affecting all of these manufactured weather fronts here in Illinois, coming out of Iowa. It's amazing. It is flippin' amazing to just watch the destruction that is taking place on a daily basis. Wow. Well, let's get to the weather, because I have some for you. Yes, I do. How about wildfires in Washington? I didn't even know about this. And, well, here they are.
This morning, hundreds of homes remain under evacuation orders as a large brush fire continues to rage in Mason County. That fire is estimated now at 250 acres and is still growing. The fire broke out yesterday afternoon near Shelton in the area of Rainbow Lake. KOMO's Ryan Sims takes a look at those frantic evacuations.
This is a 4th of July that really is not ending on a festive note here in Shelton, with many people coming here to the Red Cross wondering if they even have a home that is still standing.
Fire crews relied on an all-out air arsenal to try to contain this blaze.
a high-flying show of acrobatics in the effort to save more than 200 homes.
I'm just hoping that there's nobody back there and nobody's getting hurt.
To make sure everyone is okay, state resources are being used to help battle this fire. Yet on the ground, people like Casey Brown Jr. did not wait to help those who needed to evacuate.
Kept going down the road, found the sheriff. He told me do what I can to help. So here I am.
Around Rainbow Lake, several roadblocks kept people from completing their 4th of July plans. The result, some drivers faced detours that took them more than 10 miles away.
I'm on an electric car with a short battery, so I might have to go home and get the big truck and then drive around.
People who live in this area tell KOMO News they did worry that this summer would see its share of wildfires. Yet with more than 200 evacuations happening on the 4th of July, they say this is too much, too soon.
It's getting worse and worse every year. It really is. It's just as fast as it's happened. Everything's catching on fire.
And once this fire is contained comes the big investigation, including how this entire fire got started in.
We'll do our investigation to find out how that wildfire started. That's right. We don't know, but there's several wildfires in Washington. Several. Where is my other? Well, interesting. 10 homes completely destroyed in Washington. Several wildfires taking place. And that does not bode well for the days ahead, because I have not been feeling good about what's going to be taking place in California, on the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California. And I think we're going to see an awful lot of fires. You know, Canada, the wildfires are still going on. The smoke in New York City is still going on. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is what we're living now. I can't. Ugh. I hate it. I hate it. Flooding.
Well, Karen, less than 24 hours ago, this street was completely flooded. Like many others here in Cicero, crews were out all day and night during the record-setting rainfall, trying to clear the sewer and help expedite the draining. But town officials say the heavy rainfall just wasn't manageable. Basements and businesses in Cicero and Berwyn flooded over the weekend. Cars stranded under viaducts after torrential downpours pounded the Chicagoland area.
Next thing you know, it's like all the way up to the grass, the sidewalk, all the way up to the porch.
Mark Simpson's basement near Central and 24th Street completely flooded.
I was down there in my fishing waders and it was like up to my hips.
All their furniture and appliances stored downstairs, a total loss.
It was all jumbled up because everything was floating around, so it was a mess.
Simpson says he and his 80-year-old mother, Anna, originally had plans to go fishing that morning. Knowing they couldn't leave their home, they improvised.
There's nothing we can do, so why don't we just grab a line and shoot fish from the porch.
But the Simpsons aren't the only ones now dealing with water damage.
It was frustrating to see because we had just finished remodeling the basement.
Over near 62nd and Kenneth, standing water remains on the street, where Jeffrey Munoz's basement was flooded. Brand new doors they had just installed literally the night before, completely soaked and have to be replaced.
We need Chicago to fix the sewer systems, especially around the area. It's been happening a lot.
The town of Cicero's spokesperson blaming the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District today, saying it, in part, quote, opened its drainage lines very late, again helping Chicago neighborhoods to drain first before opening the locks for suburban communities like Cicero.
Just don't expect your government to do anything that's going to be helpful. Connecticut.
Multiple areas across our state, as we mentioned, are still dealing with flooding this morning. Some roads even still shut down. Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Olivia Schuler joins us now live from one of those spots where drivers will have to get around. Good morning, Olivia.
Hey, Caitlin, good morning. You just mentioned it. We're on West Avon Road in Farmington. The water levels have completely receded, but the road is still shut down, so it's impassable for drivers. Police did confirm to us this morning that part of the reason for the flooding on this road was due to some construction that is a little bit farther up here. Now, all across the state, there was really these issues of flooding from that torrential downpours that we saw. Now, Tuesday afternoon, parking lots turned into ponds and streets into streams. Even in the north end of Hartford, the water reached some people's waist. Flooding did create hazardous conditions for many drivers. Dove Lane in Middletown, parked cars were inches away from being fully submerged in water. This morning, Rocky Hill police are reminding drivers to be cautious. Water levels are still high near the Connecticut River this morning. And if you do see high levels of water while you're driving, never attempt to drive through it.
Turn around, don't drown. Do you think maybe that the drainage system's not working? Could it be that they could be closing off those drainage systems? I don't think a lot of people want to think about how evil a whole lot of people are. And might they be getting a little bit of a benefit helping all of those weather terrorists? All of the liars regarding climate change, the United Nations, which we're going to get into, and I want to thank Marty Lauderdale for sending me some information on what the United Nations is doing, and we'll get into that. But they're forcing on a whole lot of people this, it's got to be climate change. No, really, you can bet that if you do a little bit of research, you might change it. No, forget it. Forget it. Why bother? Why bother? New Jersey?
Quick-moving storms rolled through parts of our area earlier this evening, leaving behind quite a mess. 3,800 people in Camden County are without power tonight.
I've never seen anything like it. It was tons of rain, which was like, wow, and then no real thunder and lightning, and then all of a sudden the wind was just wild.
There are a number of trees and power lines down here in Haddonfield. A couple of cars had to be towed after stalling in floodwaters that neighbors say was waist deep at one point. It has since receded. Thankfully, those storms are moving out.
Just one storm can bring an awful lot of damage. Boy, are we being taken out fast. We are being taken out fast. How about Mongolia? It will likely get worse. What do you think, guys? You think it's likely to get worse? China is really experiencing a whole lot of destruction. So is Indonesia. Oh, there's so many places. And this is just the way it's going to go. Unbelievable. But it's just the way it's going to go. Oh boy, do I not like the liars and the evil shitheads winning, but they sure are. Man, are they. China.
you like this video, then like.
You know, I watched this news broadcast. I can't remember what channel, but they were talking about how China was experiencing the karma effect of all of the pollution into the air causing the climate change, and look at what's happening. And I am absolutely horrified by every reporter is on it, no matter. It wasn't a mainstream media. It wasn't an American mainstream media, but every mainstream media is on this climate change. And you cannot tell me that these reporters don't know about weather modification, because some of those reporters actually reported on the weather modification, certainly China. Mainstream media has told people man can modify the weather. Don't you think that that might beg questions in people's minds? No. We're in a really dangerous position here with people who just decided to turn off their thinking. Literally, turn off their thinking. And they handed it over to all of the authority figures lying to them.
The Met Office are warning that in the UK it was the hottest June on record since time began, and that heat has the fingerprints of climate change all over it. I mean, I didn't even realise the climate had fingers. That's how far behind I am. They say it helps explain why there's a water shortage and how thousands might die from heat this year. I also think, having worked inside the UK Met Office, and I understand how they're financed, how they need there to be climate drama so that they can get government grants for climate in order that they can employ the fact. But yes, people, be very, very afraid if there is another day where it goes above 21 degrees in the UK and it stops pissing down just for 1 second. Please know it's got the fingertips of climate all over it.
That's the Katie Hopkins I like. So, the UN is planning to seize global emergency powers with Biden's support. Thank you, Marty, for sending this along. Yes, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, which is just under the United Nations, it's under the United Nations umbrella, they are working real fast to get that one world government established, and it's coming. Oh boy, it's coming fast. The proposal might be the biggest attempted power grab in the history of the United States. If approved, the United States as we know it could cease to exist. So September 24, they got a summit going on, and it's, let's see. Our common agenda? What? Our common agenda is the Secretary General's vision for the future of global cooperation. It calls for inclusive, networked, and effective multilateralism to better respond and deliver for the people and planet, and to get the world back on track by turbocharging. Get that? That's the United Nations, okay? I'll link to it. That's the United Nations website. Turbocharging sustainability goals of Agenda 2023. But we're conspiracy theorists, right? Right, yeah. Turbocharging, right here. Action. On the Sustainable Development Goals, it outlines possible solutions to address the gaps. and risks that have emerged since 2015, calling for a summit of the future that will be held in 2024, 2 months prior to the United States 2024 election for their president. Who knows if we'll even have one? So, here. Oh boy, yeah, Summit of the Future. Member nations will adopt a pact for the future. So let me, before I forget, put the link to this article in the chat, and the link to the United Nations, our common agenda. So you can circulate it, because I know we're all about action here. Although there are numerous radical proposals included in the agenda, perhaps none are more important than the United Nations plan for a new emergency platform, a stunning proposal to give the United Nations significant power in the event of future global shocks, such as another worldwide pandemic. Seems to go hand in hand with that World Health Organization International Pandemic Treaty, doesn't it? Many of the details of the United Nations emergency platform were laid out in March 2023 policy paper titled Strengthening the International Response to Complex Global Shocks and Emergency Platform. In the paper, the United Nations Secretary General writes, and you can click on the hyperlinks, quote, I propose that the General Assembly provide the Secretary General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale, severity, and reach. So the Secretary General has proposed to give the Secretary General a whole lot of power in the world. Yeah. They're not self-interested, though. They're so concerned about everything that's happening in the world. So concerned about the world's people. He is, I should say. He is Secretary General. I love the people of the world. Give me the power to rule and control them. Once triggered, the emergency platform will give the United Nations the ability to, listen to this, quote, actively promote and drive an international response that places the principles of equity and solidarity at the center of its work. The United Nations would bring together the stakeholders of the world, including academics, governments, private sector actors, and international financial institutions, central banks, to ensure there is a unified global response to the crisis. Wow. The emergency platform would also give the United Nations the power to, quote, ensure that all participating actors make commitments that can contribute meaningfully to the response, and that they are held to account for delivery on those commitments. The United Nations would be given unprecedented authority over the public and private sectors of huge swaths of the world, all in the name of battling a yet unknown crisis. It gets worse. As difficult as it might be to believe the story gets even worse. Although the duration of the emergency platform would initially be set for a finite period, at the end of that period, the Secretary General could extend it indefinitely. Indefinitely. The Secretary General would have the authority to keep the emergency platform in place indefinitely, all without reauthorization from member nations. Sounds like a good proposal, right? So what kind of global shock would trigger the emergency platform? The United Nations provides several examples, like a major climatic event, which they could bring about themselves, future pandemic risks, which they can bring about themselves, a global digital connectivity disruption, which they can bring about themselves, a major event in outer space, the aliens are coming, which they could bring about themselves, and unforeseen risks, anything they choose. The proposal makes clear that it, quote, would allow the convening role of the United Nations to be maximized in the face of crises with global reach and should be agnostic as to the type of crisis, as we do not know what type of global shock we may face in the future. What do you mean you don't know? Of course you know. You've got it all planned. You have all the scenarios. Further, quote, the Secretary General would decide when to convene an emergency platform in the response to a complex global shock. Or put simpler terms, a global shock is whatever the United Nations leadership says it is, triggered when the United Nations desires. Biden administration supports the proposal. The emergency platform proposal might be the biggest attempted power grab in the history of the United Nations, but as shocking as it is, it pales in comparison to the Biden administration's treatment of this proposal. Rather than assert America's independence and sovereignty, the White House has expressed its support for the emergency platform. The emergency platform would centralize an immense amount of power and influence, given the United Nations greater control over the lives of Americans than it has ever before. And rather than stand up for those American rights, July 4th, yay, happy Independence Day, Biden has already agreed to sell us out. So if the emergency platform is approved 2 months before the 2024 election, oh, what could they pull off prior to the election? The United States as we know it could cease to exist. That sounds dire, but it's true. We either stand for freedom now or risk everything come September 2024. And I think that we'll just sit back, do nothing, and just wait for September 2024. You see how many things are taking place fast? We're still, mainstream media, well, a whole lot of the also independent media now, focused on that brick of cocaine found at the White House. But truly, the most important things that are taking place don't get much attention. So, giving away our independence and our sovereignty to United Nations and their, subsidiaries like the World Health Organization. We won't even have any ability to try to get all the other problems worked out. And there's a lot. Let me put this at the end. There's a whole lot. What is this? Oh, this is CDC planning for a zombie apocalypse, but it's not just the CDC, it's the Council on Foreign Relations. Let's listen to a few minutes of this redacted video and their guest analyzing the zombie apocalypse. And do not think this is a joke. They can absolutely simulate out there for the public zombies coming to get you, a zombie virus. Look at what's happening in our cities, Philadelphia, San Francisco, New York City, all of these areas where we have people who are literally behaving like zombies. The drugs, we've got drugs that are eating away, skin, leaving scabs all over their bodies. Oh, they can do it easily. Hit that banner. Okay, here we go.
The Johns Hopkins University, the Event 201 piece was from October 2019. So this one actually predates it, 4 months. So this is from the Council on Foreign Relations from June 2019. Before we start, understand that the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR, is the single most prestigious and influential Washington think tank. So the fact that this video was published by the CFR speaks volumes, and its corporate members, who it represents, are all the usual suspects, the mega corporate entities that are basically more powerful than many countries. So it's a representation of this supranational elite: BlackRock, Bank of America, Apple, Google, Meta, Facebook, Goldman Sachs. I mean, it's huge. Pfizer is on the list. It has a massive donor list of billionaire venture capitalists, including, of course, the Gates Foundation, among many, many others.
And I just want to interject here and say, they're the stakeholders. That donor list, these are the stakeholders that the United Nations will bring together to determine how to deal with our whatever global shock comes about. Those are the people who will be controlling everybody. Hit the banner again. Okay.
So let's go ahead and watch this video from, again, June 2019, before the so-called COVID-19 pandemic began. It's titled, "What a Zombie Apocalypse Can Teach Us About Pandemics." And the description reads, "What would happen if one day the dead rose up, hungry for human flesh and brain? This scenario has played out in movies and books for decades, but science fiction fans aren't the only ones giving some thought to the zombie apocalypse. The CDC, major universities, and even the Department of Defense have plans for the day the dead rise, not because they expect it, but because it serves as a useful intellectual exercise for infectious disease and foreign policy. Although international protocols exist to prevent the rapid spread of disease, each country's individual policies, infrastructure, and interests ultimately decide the course of any outbreak, including zombies." So the CFR, CDC, Pentagon, and whichever universities they're referring to, were not planning for a viral pandemic per se. They were planning a real military response for a fictional threat of a zombie apocalypse, or in order to make people think that a virus would be equal to a zombie apocalypse. So let's get started with the video.
Okay.
Zombies.
The flesh-eating, brain-hungry monsters that ravenously attack the world until everyone is infected. Could such a frightening science fiction disaster actually happen? As far-fetched as it seems, according to what we know from lore and canon, zombieism would work the same way as infectious diseases like SARS, Ebola, and the flu. Once a person gets infected, they pass it from person to person via close contact.
So they're comparing SARS, Ebola, and the flu with zombieism. First of all, those are all very different viruses. The flu is a seasonal respiratory virus that everyone has had many times. And the treatment, as I don't know, any parent knows, or anybody in general, is rest and fluids. You get the flu, you stay home until you're better.
Right.
And Ebola, right? Ebola is not contracted the same way. It's not the aerosol droplets hanging in the air like the flu or a respiratory virus. It's transmitted through blood and bodily fluids. So the fictional threat of zombieism, of course, is completely different than any of those. But there we have the CFR video equating all of them.
Well, what they're doing is giving us the idea that our bodies are weapons and that we cannot be sure of what we're passing or contracting. That's what they're weaving through this thing that, yes, we should not equate. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's keep going.
Okay.
As with any newly emerging pathogen, the search for a cure would be complicated, since its origins would likely be a mystery.
So of course they'll need a pharmaceutical product supposedly to combat this disease, which is of unknown origin to this day, right? Starting to sound familiar. Does this sound familiar to what's been going on?
Yes.
And what has gripped the media for, I don't know, the last 3 years to this?
Okay. Check out the video. Listen. It's, I read into Alive a couple of months ago. What is remarkable, on the CDC's website, they have a comic book. It's like a comic reading of the zombie apocalypse, which that video coming out of the CFR is kind of like very similar to the CDC comic on the zombie apocalypse. And if people think that they're just, gaming another virus and just using the zombie apocalypse as, this fictional scenario, realize they do have the technology also. The drugs, the fentanyl, the flesh-eating drugs that they are now on the street, okay, that's one thing. But they have technology, holographic technology, that you could be literally walking down the street and suddenly see the person who you're looking at, their face melt right off their head. There is so much that they have that can freak people out. And unfortunately, we don't have a majority of the people who are willing to look at all of these different scenarios, the technology that they now have, connect the dots to kind of be somewhat calm should something else arise. No, they will freak the hell out. Oh boy. Life, man. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? DeWine requests disaster declaration for East Palestine. 5 months later?
Palestine, Ohio, 5 months after that train derailment that rocked the town and caused residents there to be fearful there was pollution in their community. There's still a lot of questions about how much damage was done after that fiery explosion off the tracks.
And Governor Mike DeWine has requested a major presidential disaster declaration. And in a letter to President Biden, DeWine asked for guaranteed federal assistance in case the train company, Norfolk Southern, stops voluntarily assisting. News Nation was the first cable news network on the scene after that derailment took place. And we are sticking with East Palestine as the people there grapple with sickness and also a declining local economy. Joe Khalil is at the White House this morning with the latest on DeWine's official request. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, and I'm glad you point that out because we're certainly not at the end of the road for all of the people living there. And just overnight, as you mentioned, Governor Mike DeWine making that request official, asking President Biden in a letter to declare an official disaster emergency for East Palestine. People who were watching News Nation, because we were all over it, will remember there were thousands of people that had to be evacuated from their homes as toxic chemicals were spewing into the air after the derailment happened. You may be asking yourself, this was back in February, so why now make this request? Well, turns out that yesterday was the deadline that FEMA had sent for the state of Ohio to be making this request. We are told by a spokesperson for Governor Mike DeWine that he actually wanted to push that request further and asked FEMA to do so. They did not. And so his hand in some ways were forced, and he made that official ask of President Biden last night in the letter. Now, there is a benefit to having the president declare this as a disaster, and that is that it opens up more funding, more resources for the cleanup and for those who've been really impacted by all of this. Right now, nearly all the cleanup and the living expenses is being paid for by Norfolk Southern, the train company that is responsible for this derailment. But Governor DeWine points out that in his letter, their help, Norfolk Southern's help, is not mandatory. And really, at any time, they could get up and leave, and then the town would be stranded again. He says here in his letter, quote, the possibility remains that the voluntary support provided by Norfolk Southern could at some point in the future cease. And this declaration is needed to ensure that state and federal government use all resources available to step in and provide the community with needed assistance.
Okay, the community is not getting the needed assistance that it actually needs from Norfolk Southern. So why is DeWine, why did he wait 5 months to declare an obvious disaster, right? The disaster declaration. Why wait 5 months? I find this very, very strange. And even with that declaration, there ain't gonna be an awful lot of funds that go into East Palestine. You heard it. People are getting sick. Their economy is dying. Oh. It seems pretty obvious that government only wants you for the money they can get from you. God, we are being so screwed. Oh my God, we are being so screwed. So, Orwellian Ministry of Truth busted. Judge bars Biden officials and agencies from contacting social media companies. This is interesting. It's a victory, but you know what? Unfortunately, victories don't last unless we pile up the victories, and well, that entails an awful lot of Americans taking action. So in order fittingly issued on Independence Day, a federal judge in Louisiana has forbidden multiple federal agencies and officials from contacting social media companies with the intent to moderate content. And the victory, okay, so the judge has issued an injunction against the White House, against the press secretary, against others. But do you think it's going to stop them? I don't think it's even going to stop them. And then we'll have congressional hearings on, well, there was an injunction placed, and we now have evidence that you continued to contact social media companies What do you say to that? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. If the allegations made by plaintiffs are true, this is what the judge said. And the plaintiffs are Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, Stanford's Jay Bhattacharya, I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation, Jim Hoft from Gateway Pundit. So, if the judge says, if the allegations made by plaintiffs are true, the present case arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States, in United States history. The plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits in establishing the government has used its power to silence the opposition. The dozens of people and agencies enjoined Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre, the Food and Drug Administration, Centers for Disease Control, the Treasury Department, State Department, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, the FBI, the entire Justice Department, and the Department of Health and Human Services. Well, it also encompasses the Justice Department's effort to suppress reporting about Hunter Biden's laptop from hell, the evidence thus far depicts an almost dystopian scenario. That's what the judge wrote in a 155-page ruling. Wow. The United States government seems to have assumed a role similar to the Orwellian Ministry of Truth. The White House defendants made it clear to social media companies what they wanted suppressed and what they wanted amplified. Dowdy, or Doty, that's the judge, listed a couple of examples in that ruling. One, this White House correspondence to social media companies cannot stress the degree to which this needs to be resolved immediately. Please remove this account immediately. To Facebook, are you guys effing serious? I want an answer on what happened here, and I want it today. This is a concern that is shared at the highest, and I mean highest level of the White House. Hey folks, wanted to flag the below tweet, and I am wondering if we can get moving on the process of having it removed ASAP. The judge noted that the badgering came simultaneous with threats of changing the social media regulation scheme, and that those threats had extra credibility since they came as the Democrats controlled the White House and Congress. Okay. Do we need help from the American people when they realize that it was our government censoring our speech? Yes! Will we have that help from the American people? No. All right. The reason why these victories don't stick is because the American people are literally just like zombies. And here, of course, the New York Times depicts this anti-censorship ruling as a dangerous shield for disinformation. The most surreal fact of U.S. political life is that the leading advocates for unified state corporate censorship are large media corporations themselves. New York Times. What did the New York Times write? That was Glenn Greenwald, his tweet. New York Times, a judge limited Biden administration officials from contacting social media sites, a ruling that could curtail efforts to fight disinformation. And where is the disinformation coming from? Government officials, mainstream media. There are a whole lot of shootings taking place. A whole lot took place just yesterday, July 4th. In fact, mainstream media, there was one video that I saw titled, July 4th has become one of the most violent days. Philly mass shooting suspect identified as 40-year-old Black Lives Matter supporter. Yep. Cam Brady Watson. Karika. Black Lives Matter. Oh, those Democrats. Take away their guns. 5 people killed Monday in Philadelphia. And there was a shooting yesterday in Kansas. Can't remember all of the different places. 4 bodies recovered in 48 hours at border. What's going on, man? I thought, Title 42, all of us were just hysterical, claiming that we were going to have mass migrants coming across the... We've had mass migrants coming across the border. Title 42 didn't make any difference whatsoever. But the border seems to be getting not so good.
It's the end of Title 42. The number of daily illegal crossings at the southern border has dropped since the expiration of the restrictions that allowed the U.S. to quickly turn back migrants at the southern border. But officials are now warning the recent decrease will not last long. And the number of daily border apprehensions, as you can see here, has been up for the past 3 weeks in a row. Joining us now is Jorge Ventura, live along the southern border in a familiar spot, Eagle Pass, Texas. Jorge?
Hey there, Blake. I do want to report, I was actually just informed by sources with Texas Department of Public Safety that they have just recovered 4 bodies, including an infant, in just the last 48 hours. Just once again highlighting the risk that migrants are taking in attempts to reach American soil. But take a look at this video here. News Nation cameras exclusively captured a group of Venezuelan migrants in that Rio Grande River trying to come into the U.S. They were blocked by that razor wire barricade, as you can see there. And in that shocking video footage, it does show a 9-year-old baby, a 9-month-old baby in that water. And in the past couple of days, we've been seeing lots of children in those waters. It's a very dangerous. It's that Rio Grande River. It has a very strong current. Local officials here in Eagle Pass are worried because there are reported a lot of drownings in this area related to migrants. So you're just once again highlighting that humanitarian crisis. And actually speaking with those migrants, majority of them coming from Venezuela, who actually say that they were trying to get into the U.S., but that razor wire set up by Texas DPS has blocked their entry. And when we spoke with them, they said they spent at least 3 hours there. We actually spoke to another group. We're actually seeing it right there, that was on the Rio Grande for at least 3 days trying to get in to the U.S., but that razor wire setting up that blockade. But once again, Texas DPS has informed me that in just the last 48 hours, at least 4 bodies have been recovered, at least in one of those being an infant. And earlier this morning, 2 children at the ages of 8 and 11 years old were abandoned today on the border after a smuggler sent them by themselves through that Rio Grande River. We're looking at that now. They're both from Guatemala. Texas DPS says that as of right now, they've actually encountered around 900 children abandoned here at the southern border. Once again, just highlighting that humanitarian crisis. And what migrants are telling us is that they refuse to go back to the Mexican side because they are afraid that they will be extorted by Mexican cartels.
The cartels have so much control over all of these migrants coming across the border. We have an awful lot of kids unaccompanied. Child trafficking, maybe? Do you hear any of our government officials caring about what is taking place down there? Oh my God. Those tubes that you saw, the migrants just hopping over, that was to stop the migrants from coming across. The border wire is not throughout the entire section where migrants are coming across. You have the National Guard in Texas that's opening the gates for migrants coming across. So you have an awful lot of bullshit coming across mainstream media. I want to once again recommend Yorkshire Rose channel. She's going around to a lot of hotels that are filled up with migrants in the UK. And she's got a lot of guts.
Been to one hotel in Liverpool today.
Right, so we've come to the...
Have we got no mods on? Yeah, just ignore, that's what I do. Just ignore, nothing better to do with the time. So we've got an automatic door here, guys, that is closed.
So can we have a word, please?
Or is maintenance.
Hiya. Would you be able to pass on a complaint to Serco for us? No. Would you be able to get a manager out that would be able to speak to us? We just...
No managers here.
No manager. Is there anybody that we're able to speak
today,
to?
Professor from the weekend.
It's coming on the weekend, yeah. Right? Because we just got the tip off that this place was housing migrants. I know it's been doing it since September, and I just think it's a bit outrageous.
We can't walk on campus.
We can't walk on.
No, we can't campus.
Well, I've not.
I have.
All right. Well. Yeah. Okay. So if I talk to you, so I'm concerned, mate. Here you go, Bulldog. Hold that phone.
Nobody will speak when we have a camera. That guy has got the name the Devonshire Hotel on his t-shirt, so he is part of this hotel. I don't need permission. I'm allowed. I'm a reporter just to film.
That's not borderland. And yeah, we just want to basically know what.
So that front building you saw was the conference center for this hotel behind this gate. Quite beautiful grounds for sure.
Serco is housing 200 I've got to start again now. Afternoon everyone, welcome to another episode of Final News. So this is the Devonshire House Hotel.
Oh, they're filming us there, so we're going to have some more photographs put on the Serco hit list by the looks of it.
Do you have a permission to come on a private land? This is all private land.
Yeah, but this.
Do you get any permission?
Yeah, but you know these hotels.
You tell me first.
I don't need permission. I'm allowed. I'm a reporter just to film.
Private land. That's not borderland. It's not public land.
No.
Private land.
But if this hotel was home to the public, it would be.
I'm just asking you. You have permission to come on a private land. Did you get permission from Council or somewhere?
Did I get permission from where?
Did you get permission? This is private land.
Can I come and have a look? Will you give me permission to come in?
I'm not giving you.
Can I come and see how well these asylum seekers are being looked after?
You have permission to come on a private land.
Yeah, can I? Come on.
No, you're not.
Oh.
You're standing illegally, actually, without permission.
You haven't asked me to leave. If you'd have asked me to leave.
No, you can't say no, anything. I can. This is my country. This is England. This is England. But you know the law of the land here. We're not some corrupt tin pot banana republic. The law of the land applies. On a private land. So the petrol station is there. I'm just here, mate. Because listen, mate, 200,000 homeless. My people are on the streets, and these people are living in luxury. Do you not see how unjust it is? You're standing on a private land. Do you see millions of my men going to India and claiming asylum? Where's the women and children? Because all the men here are weak cowards that leave the women behind.
All right, well, yeah. Check out United Nations Compact for Migration. All of it very purposeful. All of it very deliberate. All of it bringing in an awful lot of young military-aged men into countries. And it is utterly, that these people are taking over all of these hotels, government funded. That should really raise eyebrows. An awful lot of people like, what is going on here? Hotel after hotel after hotel. This woman goes to Yorkshire Rose. In fact, is this another one? Let me see. Yes, here is another hotel.
21. It has just been confirmed that they will be keeping this hotel as a hostel for another 3 years. That lets you know, guys, that there's no stopping this. So this is the Grove House Hotel in Wallasey, the Wirral.
Excuse me?
Excuse me, is this hotel open to the public?
What are you filming for? Don't film that. Don't be filming me.
Hey, don't take the camera off me!
I said, don't be filming me, I said.
Excuse me, I've come to see.
We're independent.
I know, but sorry, we're reporters. Can we have a chat?
Would you be able to have a chat with us on the phone? All right, we'll do that.
Sorry,
There's no issue.
Oh, it's Serco. Yeah, you're Serco, aren't you? Yeah. He's just gone to get hold of me. He's just gone to get hold of me. And he's Serco. I can't believe how you... This guy's just gone to get my phone. I've come to do a report on the hotel, that's all.
Okay, that's fine, but could you leave the premises? I'll speak to you. Right, I'll speak to you. Excuse me, sir. We just want to find out why this is being used to house migrants.
We don't need the police. We're doing a report, that is all. That's all we're doing is a report, that's fine. We're going.
Unbelievable. How about this? Military families told to vacate airbase set to home asylum seekers.
Tells in because despite Rishi claiming that he is stopping the boats, the RAF Wethersfield site is now set to become home to 1,700 fighting-age males. I'm sure that the locals are ecstatic with this news, but to add to this, some military families living there have been given less than a week's notice to leave the premises in order to make way for these asylum seekers. It is nice to see that the government cares so compassionately about the families of those who are willing to risk it all. Isn't it just brilliant? Come on, you don't see this in the adverts, do you? You don't see this in the adverts for our military. Come and join our armed forces. Yeah, we'll teach you new skills. We'll teach you all sorts. And you can fight and die or lose a leg in battle for this country, and then we'll biff your family out of accommodation for people who come from countries where we might have just sent you to fight, unchecked, no idea who they are, or really exactly what their criminal record is, and then we'll let them live in your missus's house. Braintree Council have fought the decision every single step of the way and are appealing the recent ruling in April. Joining me now to discuss this is the Conservative leader of Braintree District Council. It's Graham Butland. Graham, thank you very, very much. Please tell me that this cannot be true, that we have military families being biffed out of accommodation for young illegal immigrants.
The first point I must make is that this is the issue of military families is not an issue which involves Braintree District Council. But I can confirm that the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence have been in touch with local families, local military families currently on that site, to move them to new accommodation, which they say will be closer to their duty to where they carry out those duties. But the actual removal of those families is not an issue which Braintree District Council has played any part in.
No, I understand that, absolutely, and you're right to make that clear. I don't think anyone is saying for a single second this is your fault or this is the council's fault. This is the fault of the situation that we're in at the moment, and that is a massive, massive problem. But nonetheless, it is happening, and whether or not they're turfed out and made homeless or they're having to move home, still, they are going from living somewhere to not living there anymore. And a group of people who have potentially just arrived here are going to be living there. It does seem as though, frankly, that is deeply unfair.
Well, there are issues that arise from this. Of course, some of these families have children, so there are issues about the schooling of those children, having to move from one school to another. And this is just one of many issues that as a council we have been raising in our discussions with the Home Office about this plan to use this site, which we as a council have consistently maintained is not the right place for the type of provision that the government wishes to make.
So what are some of the problems? What have some of these good British military families been saying to you?
Well, in terms of what are the problems with this site, it's an isolated site. It's in the country. It has no public transport. And clearly, the facilities basically are very much as they were when the US forces left that base many, many years ago. It's not going to be a detention centre. It's a place where asylum seekers will be free to come and go.
Free reign.
There's not many places you can go from this place. There's no public transport, as I say. The nearest, largest town is Braintree, which isn't a huge town. And that's some 10 to 12 miles away. We don't think it's the right place for it. We have been battling with the Home Office through the courts. Unfortunately, the courts have not granted us an injunction, and neither have they determined a key issue, which is the government is relying on something which is called Class Q. I won't go into the details, but basically what that means is that the government is saying this is an emergency. We do not therefore need to abide by planning with the local authority, and we can just go ahead and do it. And we reject that.
Yeah, they're claiming it's an emergency. I mean, if it is an emergency, it's an emergency of their own making. But when it comes to the families, what are they saying to you? We've just heard there from you something that I must admit I hadn't considered before, but it kind of makes me even more angry, which is that you've got children who will be living at sites like this, going to schools with a life, who will probably end up being traumatised, possibly, certainly massively discomforted by having to move to a different school to set up a new life somewhere else, in order for us to prioritise people who we quite possibly don't even know what convictions they have in foreign countries, which is staggering.
Well, I'm not going to use that sort of language about the asylum seekers that are coming in. They will need to be properly processed. In terms of the families themselves, clearly they are military families. They are used to moving from one military base to another. And as far as the direct contact between those families and the council, there has been none, because they're not being made homeless, which would be the only occasion, if you like, when someone would come to us as the local housing authority to assist. The council has been assured that these people have been properly contacted by both the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence. But I cannot give you any evidence that has either taken place or not taken place.
Wow. Okay, so, well, they're not going to be homeless. They're just going to be moved someplace else. Moving creates an awful lot of stress, a lot of change, a lot of disruption. For asylum seekers to then live in their homes? It ain't right. France is still a mess.
Most concerned, you were for years on the show, about these attacks on our culture and the institutions of the English-speaking world, in particular Britain, Australia, also the US, and of course by the refusal, by the inability or the fear of actually saying these things, the punishment that would come in doing so. But looking at France now, it seems that a lot of things they've been warning about are there now on open display.
Yeah, it's really shocking what's happening in France. This is an orgy of nihilism, just destruction of people's own communities, destruction of great important buildings, libraries, and so on. This is a horrendous nihilistic assault on the French Republic. That's what we're facing here. And you know what worries me just as much as the riots themselves is the sympathetic response that I've seen among the Western commentariat. What's striking is that they're much more sympathetic to these rioters than they were to the Gilets jaunes, who protested in Paris and other parts of France every weekend for more than a year. They were pushing back against Macron's authoritarianism, and in particular, his eco-authoritarianism, where he wanted people to pay more for fuel and to really dent their bank balances. There was very little sympathy for the Gilets jaunes, but there's much more for these rioters. And I think what we're witnessing is a coming together of the Western intellectuals and these nihilistic rioters, in the sense that both of those people think that France deserves to be punished. They think it deserves to be punished for its supposed crimes of history, for the way it behaves, for its ideals, for its arrogance. I think we're seeing something really very worrying and disturbing in France, where there is this unity of thought between woke observers and rioters on the streets that this horrible republic deserves this punishment. I think it's a very worrying turn in the contemporary culture.
And everybody really needs to take
This
heed.
punishment.
Take heed, because the riots, a whole lot of them are those migrants coming into Western countries, blowing them up. Geez, could that happen here? Could it happen in the UK? Could it happen in Australia? Yeah. Is that part of the plan? Yeah. Yeah. Hundreds of cars gutted in France's Marseille.
Nous souhaitons que les services publics reprennent. Les agents y sont engagés très courageusement, avec beaucoup.
A whole lot of mess. Just a whole lot of mess. France burns. Destructive violence highlights failed immigration policy. A failed immigration policy? What's going on here? What do you mean immigrants are doing this? Oh.
Feel discriminated against, who feel underprivileged in society.
Oh, this is what it's about. Right. Let me play some of this. It's amazing what mainstream media is saying about these riots. And Sky News Australia is also mainstream media, but they're the Fox News. They're the equivalent of Fox News here.
White society in this case, it's racist police in particular. The two police officers who stopped this 17-year-old Nahel Merzouk, an Algerian-Moroccan youth, last Tuesday, stopped him last Tuesday as he drove a car and he shot him dead. So apparently it's the police's fault that France is now burning. So say the journalists. It's not the fault of the rioters, apparently, who are actually doing that burning, doing that looting, that shooting, that bashing. Let me give you an example of the kind of deceitful coverage that I mean before doing a fact check for you with video evidence. This is from Britain's BBC, a state broadcaster captured by the left, as state broadcasters usually are, and pushing all the standard lines of the left to explain this extraordinary violence. This is unbelievable.
And it's the police that is driving people onto the streets in the first place. Many here accuse officers of discrimination. And even the UN says that France needs to address its deep-rooted issues of racism in the police force.
Nahel's family has appealed for calm, and so has France's national football team. They say it's tragic what happened here, and that working-class suburbs like this, where many people come from minority backgrounds, are suffering and have grievances. If you talk to youths here, they'll say, we face discrimination by police every day, but nobody listens to us. It is a reminder to people who feel discriminated against, who feel underprivileged in society, that they are right to feel outraged and they want to do something about it.
I needed to show you quite a bit of that because it's gone on and on. And it's like the BBC, it's not just the BBC either, it's like the BBC is actually excusing the rioters, as well as blaming French society and especially French police.
Remind you of something? The BLM riots that were peaceful? Seems they're going with a script. Like governments have a script. Mainstream media has the script. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the rioters. It has everything to do with the police. And it's my understanding, based on a news report, that the police officer was not French. This person came from another country. So it's pretty much, I so want to be able to live life again, and it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So let me just go through some of our fabulous economic conditions. Tenants say a 3-year ban on evictions kept them housed. Landlords say they're drowning in debt. Wow. Retiree Pamela Hale has paid property taxes, insurance, and other bills on a house she rents out in Oakland. But for more than 3 years, her tenants have paid no rent thanks to one of the longest lasting eviction bans in the country. The eviction moratorium in the San Francisco Bay Area city expires next month. Next month? California kept their eviction ban going that long? 3 years. Do you think it hurt corporate landlords? No. Did it hurt the small landlords? Yeah. Could that have been part of the intent of the instituting this moratorium? Yes. Yes. So, 69-year-old Pamela Hale owes more than $60,000 in back rent. She's owed. She doesn't owe. She's owed $60,000 in back rent, money she doubts she will ever see. Moreover, the tenants have trashed her house, and it will cost tens of thousands of dollars to make it habitable. It's unbelievable, and it's like, how can they have the nerve to just let something like this happen? If this happened to them, how would they feel? Dealing with this whole thing gets me so upset. Well, you have a right to be upset.
A record number of Americans are struggling to pay their rent, and it may not get better even if we see more apartments become available soon. Here to explain is Yahoo Finance's housing reporter, Rebecca Chen. And Rebecca, why isn't this good news? Why won't renters see some relief if we do see more apartments come online?
One of the biggest issue with today's rental market is that more and more buildings that are coming on proportionally are luxury apartments. In fact, in the last 20 years, it used to be just 1/3 of new apartments are luxury homes. But now more than 50%, 51% for this year are luxury homes. And they usually ask for rents that not many people can afford. And this is really becoming a problem because at the same time, a record number of Americans are struggling with paying rent. One data that we came across is that 49% renters are now cost burdened by renting a home. And what that means is about 22% of Americans, they are paying 30% or more of their income. And of that number, almost 12 million Americans are severely burdened, which means they're paying more than 50% of their income on their rent.
So, Rebecca, does that mean we're likely to see a shift in the luxury supply chain, given that there's a strain on affordable apartments?
You know, based on what I've been talking to about this topic, it seems like unfortunately, it will take some time for the market to shift because as of now, it is still more profitable for developers to build luxury housing. And there's really a couple reasons for that. The majority of the cost of getting a construction building, it goes into buying the land, goes into getting a permit, and goes into building the foundation. And when you add in the fancy stuff like having a granite countertop or having a pool and a gym, those really doesn't add much to the overhead, but these nice amenities, they can go for premium rents. And this is why a lot of developers are still focused on this luxury apartment, and that's why we're seeing that taking over the market share currently.
Rebecca, there certainly is a lot of demand. People are still being priced out of buying a home, so they're being forced to rent. When you take a look at those vacancy rates, what are you seeing there?
So vacancy rate has been at a very, very low in the past couple of years. We are seeing it came back a little bit to about 6.3 in 2023. That is a lot better than the 5% that we've been seeing in the past. But to have a very healthy and balanced market, we need to see something more around the 8%. And the reason for this is so renters have more negotiation power when there are more empty apartments on the market.
They're going for life here will only be for those who can afford it, the rich. And it's not going to get any better. It's going to get a whole lot worse. U.S. factory orders decline. What? I thought our economy was good. Factory orders decline year over year for first time since October 2020. Well, yeah, Biden recently said manufacturing. Trump brought back manufacturing when he didn't. Biden brought back manufacturing when he didn't. Factory orders declining means manufacturing is pretty much dead in the United States. Who do we rely on? China. Bankruptcy filings show credit slipping despite what spreads say. So, a rise in bankruptcy filing points to increasing bankruptcies, loan charge-off rates, and delinquencies, suggesting credit spreads are not reflective of the underlying credit backdrop. In other words, credit is getting squeezed out. The people who need some money, you're getting squeezed out, so you're filing for bankruptcy. Are you gambling with your retirement account? I have said for a long time, your pension, fund is being traded on the stock market. So what does that mean for an awful lot of people, it means they're gambling with your money. They gamble with your money. And a whole lot are saying that the stock market, that real big drop is coming soon. What does that mean for your pensions? It means good luck. Ex-top Chinese official says export curb on key metals is just the beginning. China announced export controls on two rare earth metals, gallium and germanium. Starting on August 1, these critical rare earth metals are used in microchip production. And it's just the beginning of more and more export controls, limitations. China has a lot of countermeasures, has a big toolbox, and can destroy us. They can destroy us because we rely on China for pretty much everything. Wow. Teamsters. Oh, wait, I thought that negotiation went well, and now they're talking about how, oops, sorry, UPS, there still might be a strike. Oh, I thought that was called off. Now it's back on. The negotiations collapse as nationwide strike still possible. United Parcel Service, UPS, they walked away from the bargaining table. Well, if that strike actually comes into play, forget about getting your Amazon shipments. Senior Lazard banker terminated due to inappropriate behavior at weekend party. What? Do we know what the behavior was? No, we don't. But once again, proof positive that gone are the days of cutting loose outside the office, because whether you like it or not, you're always on the clock one way or another. You do know that corporations have instituted new policies that, well, you better watch out after 5 o'clock, because if they catch you doing something, you might be terminated. Now, we don't know what happened, which is bizarre that this article is even written, but maybe it's written for a warning. Watch your behavior 24/7, because you know what? Big corporate brother is watching. You know, all these people who have been working at home, they don't get that their corporations are literally surveilling their every input into their keyboards, listening to every conversation they have, and monitoring whether or not they're losing concentration, monitoring how much they're working. Oh, this Secret Service confirms cocaine was found in West Wing phone, a West Wing phone cubby, hours after Hunter Biden visit. Oh my God. Well, good article, but don't have time. Oh, Trump is calling for more protests. Yeah. Get out there, Republicans. Hit the streets. Ramps up calls for Americans to hit the streets on his behalf. Do people even have a choice but to protest? This is what he said. Massive prosecutorial misconduct is currently taking place in America. The weaponization of law enforcement cannot be allowed to happen. Crime and inflation are rampant. Our borders are open. Our elections are rigged. Our economy is in shambles. Our energy independence is gone. Our leader is mercilessly mocked and our country is being destroyed both inside and out. Do the people of this once great nation even have a choice but to protest the potential doom of the United States of America? You know what I say to this great leader, Donald Trump? That's all? It is all he needs to say for a lot of Republicans to get out there. No organization, no plan, just get out on the streets. And that's going to work really well. You know, what we need is something organized. And, you know, how Republicans can't see that he's part of the plan is really... He's part of the swamp that he was going to drain. Yeah. All right. Well, good luck. Just hit the streets. Just protest. What are you going to be protesting? You know, the Civil War may very well come, but it's going to be so chaotic. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be, you know, the blue team versus the red team. It will going, you know, killing one another instead of focusing on the real enemies. Because Americans are so easily manipulated into getting violent. And conservatives go to red states and liberals go to blue as the country grows more polarized. And it sure has. It sure has. It's pretty frightening. So, close to the end, let me... Everybody, you know, the entitlement of Americans is pretty intense. Of all stripes and colors and religions and whatever. You know, there was a time when people just got along. On the whole. Now, everybody's screaming at everyone else.
Hi.
Hello.
Come here, Max. Max.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to say it's a nice house for a $5 tip.
You're welcome.
Hi, it's saying 0 for the tip. Was there a cash tip? Loser.
Are you supposed to pay me? I paid you the app. This is not saying anything about payment. Already paid. It says 0. It says that you left nothing. Oh, it's a tip. Yeah. I didn't do it. Can I have my food? Yeah, look at it.
Mommy! She just found her food on the ground! Why? Because I didn't tip! All of the Yes!
You can leave it, thank you. You can leave it.
No, I could speak to you, actually.
I'm sorry?
I need to speak to you. I don't think you realize where they're coming from, so I need to speak to you.
Where what's coming from?
Where the food you ordered is coming from. I don't think you realize the distance that it comes from, because then you would never actually have given what you give. So I think you can come and see face to face. Because I drove 40 minutes. And it was extremely far, and I got it to you early. So I don't think you realize where you ordered from.
That's a 15, 20-minute drive.
It's not. You need to try to drive it. I just drove it. It's 40 minutes. It's 12 and a half miles. So I don't think you realize how far it is.
So why did you accept the pickup if you think it's that far?
They don't let us know how far. So I think you need to adjust your tip to make it right.
How much is the tip?
You gave an $8 tip.
What the hell are you looking for? I gave an $8.
Okay, I'm going to bring the food back. Okay.
Okay.
I can't imagine behaving that way. I can't imagine behaving that way. Oh boy, I can't. Now, I don't get it. But we have more and more and more of these people. And, sometimes you get a hefty tip from somebody, and sometimes you don't get anything, or sometimes the tip is really small, but it all balances out, and you just kind of, it's a voluntary thing, right? Oh, wow. Oof. I don't know what to say about this culture anymore. Our people, we're really just here. Stop oil protesters. Look, this is at Wimbledon.
Wait, please.
Oh, no. Once more, orange clouds hang over a British sporting event this summer. This time it's ticker tape rather than paint dust, but it is an intrusion and it will need sorting out.
It is an intrusion. Yeah, it's an intrusion. God. What humanity. It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing to be said anymore. I am utterly amazed at what we face every single day, and people just are going about their business as if everything's just normal, and it's so not. It's really not. We got a real big problem. All right. Here, 4th of July becoming one of nation's most violent holidays.
2 hours, there have been more than 100 shootings across 13 American cities. At least 150 injured and 40 people dead. Sloan Glass joins us live from New York City. And Sloan, this is certainly overshadowing a lot of July 4th celebrations.
Yeah, Nicole, we just heard the district attorney in Philadelphia say that 4th of July celebrations, as Philadelphia knows them, are off because of that tragedy. Now, also summer months mark times of increased violence, but 4th of July, a day that should be celebratory in our nation, is taking on this new moniker. Independence Day is the riskiest day for shootings. That's according to research from the Gun Violence Archive. In 2022, more than 200 people were killed and close to 570 were wounded. The violence already erupting this year. Tragedy on Independence Day in Philadelphia, the birthplace of our nation, where 5 lives were lost and 2 children were injured. Investigators, as we just heard, are still trying to pinpoint why the 40-year-old gunman opened fire seemingly randomly at people on the streets. Now, police say a man wearing a bulletproof vest with multiple magazines, armed with an AR-15 and a handgun, fired across several blocks. Officers cornered the suspect in an alley where he surrendered. Now, officers also arrested another person who fired at the gunman during the shooting. We just heard the district attorney say that that person has been released and will not be charged. In Baltimore, celebrations turn to mourning as the search continues for multiple suspects who opened fire at an annual block party. The Brooklyn Day Party in South Baltimore has taken place every summer for 27 years. This Monday, gunfire at the event sent the city into panic. 2 young people were killed and 28 more were wounded. Half of those shot were younger than 18. Over the past decade, only 10 other shootings in the United States have resulted in so many gunshot victims, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Now, this weekend's violence hitting cities across the nation. We spoke to criminologist James Allen Fox, who found...
All right, so I don't think a lot of these shootings are false shootings and they're just lying. Americans really have gone berserk. It's unbelievable. And it's only going to get worse. We know that. What is this? Oh my God. Wake up, America. This Biden's words saying that he only has 6 grandchildren when he has 7. His denying Hunter Biden daughter, 4-year-old girl, and the Bidens have wiped that girl into non-existence.
Just to there's this new controversy now surrounding the Biden family. This one is over the president's grandchildren. Here's what he has said himself a couple months back.
The best part of it all, I have 6 grandchildren.
Yeah,
I'm crazy about them. I speak to them every single day. Not a joke.
Well, the 6th count obviously leaves out Hunter Biden's 4-year-old daughter. According to court documents, a paternity test has proven that she is indeed Hunter's. He just recently settled a child support case in her interests. The New York Times is now reporting that leaving her out has essentially become a new White House policy. They write, in strategy meetings, aides have been told that the Bidens have 6, not 7, grandchildren. Critics blasting the Bidens over it. Mark Thiessen calling it an absolute disgrace. Others labeling the Bidens monsters and the scummiest people to have ever disgraced American politics. Why can't we just decide how many grandchildren we have and leave it at that?
You know, Jillian, this story kind of breaks my heart. And politics aside, we're talking about a little 4-year-old girl who apparently knows who her father is, knows that her grandfather is the president of the United States, and they don't engage with her or even acknowledge her existence. I mean, the psychological pain of that for that little girl, everybody should take note of, particularly from a president who often talks about the dignity of every person, and he's the protector of the soul of the nation. Just start with your grandchild, Mr. President. That would be a good place.
One of those shots, just so our viewers know, was of this 4-year-old girl. Her mom posted on social media about taking her to Washington, D.C. to see the White House, to see the monuments. She knows full well who her grandfather is and said she herself is very proud of that relationship, though it doesn't exist.
No.
Raymond, we got to leave it there. Happy
All right, my friend.
Independence Day to you.
Happy
Thanks for taking
Independence
time.
Day to you. God bless that poor girl.
I will say it's very, very hard when your family does not recognize your existence. The psychological pain from that is intense. How do I know? I live it. What they're doing to the Bidens, the President of the United States, what they're doing to this little girl, it's like the worst pain you can imagine. I hate it. But on that note, let me wind down. Be prepared for anything. A whole lot is coming our way. No, I live it. I didn't lived. Not past tense. I live it every day. And it does hurt. A lot. But anyway, a whole lot is coming our way. And I really hope that you don't have to suffer any of the consequences, but I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of you who will. Ultimately, some sooner than others will experience it. We're not in good shape as a people, so I really hope that you have others in your life that know what's happening, even if they don't know what's happening, that you have a connection with them. Most important thing we can do is live honestly and speak honestly. Don't lie to people, and get yourself in a condition where you are a trustworthy human being. Hopefully, as you're doing that, you'll be a power of example for others to become trustworthy human beings, because that is the only way that anyone, can survive. But we do need the individuals in the aggregate, a huge aggregate of individuals, to get there fast. And because you don't survive alone. And you sure as hell don't survive if you've got people in your life that are messed up. Because they'll freak out, they'll, suddenly they regress, and a whole lot of the issues that are left unresolved come spewing out. And I've already seen it in subscribers. And they're okay. They haven't suffered the consequences. They have their homes, they have their life, they have, their familiarity, they've got their families, they've got this, they've got that. And I've seen stress, boom, really freaks them out. So if they can't behave in a way that is rational, reasonable, when things are fine for them, how are they going to be when they suddenly experience the consequences? They're not going to be okay. We've got a deer outside. I don't know if you heard the snorting. But one. It's always one. Anyway, guys, be safe. Be safe. make sure that you've got that awareness. You know, the switch is up and your awareness is on wherever you are, and be a force of good. Be a force of good. And on that note, I say good night. Thank you for showing up. I hope to see you tomorrow. Good night and good luck. Ciao.